Welcome back to MindMomBodyRn. We are here with Melissa Norton. Hi, thank you for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And Melissa Norton is from my children's school, which is White Bear Montessori. And Melissa, can you tell us a little bit about what you do and what your role is at the school?
Sure. So I am the assistant head of school at White Bear Montessori School. And I do a lot of things at the school, but I guess if you had to have two baskets, one is admissions and helping new families join us, and then coaching the teaching staff.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so Montessori is like this huge, beautiful thing. Some people might have heard about it. Some people might have not. Some people have heard things. It gets mixed around a lot with like Waldorf and like
Reggio Emilio.
Yes, those get tossed around a lot. So can you tell us a little bit about Montessori and then just about it? And then I want to hear how you got into it.
Sure. Well, Maria Montessori was born in the late 1800s and developed this way of working with children alongside the time when those other methods were also evolving. So that leads to a lot of confusion as well. Montessori is not a cult. It's not religious. It's really, if you boil it down, just a way of being with children.
Yes.
It's a lot of common sense, really focused on independence and building a social community of children and treating children with respect and offering them activities to do that are developmentally appropriate that they're going to be interested in. So that's in a nutshell.
Yeah.
I came to Montessori kind of through a winding road. My background, my bachelor's degree was actually in theater, and I got out of college and did some work in community theater and thought, I do not want to do this or be around these people.
Yeah.
And so then I kind of landed in childcare and worked as an assistant in a Montessori school, and then went away and did other things, and then kind of landed back in, moved to Minnesota and found a training center here and did my Montessori training in 1997. So been doing this a long time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
My training is AMI, which is the Association of Montessori International. That's another thing. Dr. Montessori never patented her work, so anyone can call themselves a Montessori school. And AMI is the original organization she created in her lifetime to uphold her work. So in any case, I did that, and I have a Master's of Education with a focus on Montessori. And then I'm one of these folks that have had every role in a school. In my course of 26 years in the field, I've worked at only 2 schools, and I've been a guide or teacher in a classroom for 3 to 6 year olds. I have subbed in every age level. I've worked in administration in various capacities, so I know a lot of the ins and outs of the way a school functions, but also, from children 0 to 12 years old, I've had experience working with them.
Yeah. And kind of like we were just talking about, like we just had an alumni night, and just you have kind of gotten to see, what is it, like see the rewards of what you've invested in these children who are now adults, right?
Yeah. I mean, the children that I first work with are in their mid to late 20s now, some of them parents, and certainly adults and professionals. Most recently, we did have an alumni event at school, and we had 4 families represented, one of which the mother went to White Bear Montessori as a child back in the late 70s. But we also had 4 high school seniors and a high school junior. And just to see them and many other children that I have relationships with, later in life, I think it summed up in one of these alumni students that came, who's a high school senior. The conversation kind of was going towards like academic benefits and what colleges people are going to. And he, this is an 18-year-old gentleman, and he says, in front of 60 parents, I want to just stop this conversation and say the thing I think is most important is that I like myself. I think I'm a good person, and I know that I'm valued in my community. And that coming from an 18-year-old.
That's going to make me cry.
I know. It made all of us cry. And that wasn't prompted at all by his mother who was sitting there or any of us. And, this is a very unusual time that we're living in and that children are growing up in. And so to see that strength of character is just so gratifying.
And ultimately, it's like that, what you just said, is the goal.
Right.
That is what we're working towards. We're not working towards like you getting into Harvard. We're not working towards you being cutthroat. We're not working towards you having to be the best at whatever you're doing. Like that.
Absolutely.
Liking yourself, knowing innately I am a good person and being able to say I am a valued member of my community. That is what all of this is for.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty incredible and a big part of that conversation. And I've heard this from other students that I am in touch with is that that social piece when you are out in being a teenager in the world and that they recognize that they know how to deal with conflict and work through things in a way and at a level of maturity that their peers who didn't go to a Montessori school don't have.
Right.
So that's pretty incredible too. And at the same time, like the same gentleman that said he liked himself, he wants to be a cardiologist and he's very successful. I mean, they're all very academically successful.
But that was not that wasn't who his identity was.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So, and you see that every day, and that could because I'm around children from 0 to 12 every day, and I see examples of that every day in the classroom. Whether it is a 5-year-old helping a 2-year-old put their coat on to go out for recess, or a third grader coming down the hall to help a kindergartner read, and how the children care for the classroom and do all the little chores.
Yeah, I really wanted to talk about that. Yeah. So if you could kind of speak to like what a guide is, why like we call guides by their first names,
sure,
the ultimately like respecting the child thing, and then if you could kind of, I'm like throwing a lot at you, but then kind of give us like what do these classrooms look like? What would we expect? Let's just go to 5.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a lot of things.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry.
Well, so in most AMI Montessori schools, we do call the teachers guides, and that's because we really feel that we are not imparting knowledge upon children. We're guiding them to discover things on their own. Certainly, there's a lot of structure around that so that children are meeting milestones and things. But, we're really there more as kind of a conduit rather than putting things upon children. And in a class.
Yes, no. And I love that. And one of the things that I was most impressed with was that the children call you Melissa.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, you're not Miss Norton.
Yep.
Marnie is called Marnie.
Yep.
I mean, the children call their teachers by their first names. And can you kind of explain?
Yeah, I mean, that's a choice that we've made as a school and a lot of other Montessori schools do. And that, well, one, there's this like Miss, M-I-S-S, and your first name. That's not really how we address people in our culture. Miss Rachel, Miss Melissa. It's kind of demeaning to the children that we have this made up way of talking about adults. It's also, I'm a human being. You're a human being, meaning the child. And we have that personal connection. And, we see ourselves as an extension of the family, of the home. And in your home, you call people by their name. I mean, unless you're mom and dad, but.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But like sisters and like siblings and I'm going to be honest, like my children's aunt, she's called Molly, right? Like, I love that because it really brings it down to like eliminating the ego.
Right.
And that is so powerful. I would say in terms of like connecting with children, when we can let go of our ego and just see each other as like these like amazing human beings that are just like connecting, it works out so much better.
Yeah, and just it also like we're living with them in at school we call it a toddler community, a children's house, because it's a classroom, but it's a place to be in community together. And the adults being approachable is part of that.
which is like huge. If you don't feel safe with the grown-ups year round, like nothing else can be done.
Right.
Because safety is that like number one thing that you need. It's based on everything.
Right. And for the children to feel secure and welcome, and that they're not going to be shamed or judged.
Yeah.
Or spoken harshly to is very important.
And Eloise will say to me, like, my teacher's, or she doesn't even say teacher, she's just Melissa. And her teacher's name is Melissa too, not this Melissa. But Melissa's happy to see me every day. I think that she misses me at night. Like, you know?
Yeah.
And it's so, I mean,
That's
like,
so sweet.
That's the regard. That's how she feels that she's regarded. And that's amazing for children to feel, you know what I mean? That they're well regarded.
Right. And every child is greeted, you know, with eye contact and their choice of a handshake or a hug or a high five every day when they come to school by multiple adults. They're not a number.
When you say goodbye, it's like they make contact, like we're ending our day together. You have a great night. I mean, they take that time with every single child, and I think it helps the children feel so seen. But more than that, kind of like Marnie says it, like, we give you our hearts and you take such good care of them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that is inherent in a good Montessorian, a good Montessori educator. And that's because with our training, we really just go back to a lot of theory and observation of children and how they develop and who they are and what is appealing to them, so that I think we come to it with a very deep respect for life and for where children are coming from and where they're going. And rather than as a commodity or something we have to tick off a box. And I think that is a big difference in a Montessori school, certainly from a traditional chain-based daycare or something like that.
Yes. So if we talk about like when children typically start Montessori, because if we look at the developmental research, you know, it's best not, it's not, I don't want to say best, but Montessori is not going to take babies sooner than what they're ready to take the Montessori. So can you kind of talk about the age that kids start Montessori, what that classroom looks like, what a typical like 1-year-old's day looks like, 1 to 2-year-old?
Well, we're fortunate at our school that we have a parent-infant program where parents come with their child, and that's from in utero through 1-year-old. And that's just a 2-hour class, more like a parenting class. And then our programs start at 16 months old. And you could just think of it as a little house for little toddlers, and they have snack. They sit together for a group snack and use real tablecloths and placemats and tiny little real glasses and silverware, and they live their day-to-day doing the things that they're doing. You know, they might be washing windows. They might be painting a picture, just much like you would have at home. At that age, I think the important piece is that they're in a social group, which you can't really replicate at home. I mean, obviously, if you have tons of cousins and things of similar age, but that's what's kind of precious and sweet about it, is that they're in this little community of 10 to 12 children having their little life, just like you and me going to work every day, except they're just little.
Yeah.
And
they are. They're just, it's the most adorable thing, because it's like you see these 16, 17, 18-month-old kids, or like even Kendall, who's 2, knows how to rinse a dish.
Yep.
Kendall knows how to wash her hands.
Yeah. I mean, I was in her classroom yesterday helping out, and she cleared her placemat, her plate. She packed up her lunch. I mean, she's this big, right?
Yeah.
She pushed in her chair, and
they like it.
They love it.
They love it.
And I had a toddler-aged child yesterday tell me that, pointing to a door in the school, that room is not available right now. Now, she said that room is not available. You know, but like they're also like exposed to all that language develop, like at a key time that language is developing.
My favorite is that's adult work.
That's adult work.
Yeah, that's adult work. I love that. Yeah. So, potty training, can you kind of talk about how that is worked on. And then also, before I forget, I want to talk about how those 10 to 12 children, there are 3 consistent adults that are part of that classroom. And what does that look like?
Yeah. Well, at our school, we are very fortunate. We have a guide, an assistant, and an aide for each of the toddler classrooms. And in Children's House, again, which is the 3 to 6-year-olds, there are also a team of 3 adults, and they're like a marriage. They work very closely together. And yes, the children are very comfortable with them.
So, can you kind of explain the role? What does a guide do?
Sure.
What are each of the roles?
So the guide gives lessons or presentations to the children. And that could be something as simple as showing them how to push in their chair or how to slice a banana. As the children get older in Children's House and elementary, there are more sophisticated activities and certainly language and math and things like tying your shoes. But that guide is really there to connect the child to the materials in the classroom. Also to help with grace and courtesy, which is really how we speak to each other, and giving the children tools to work through conflicts or give compliments or blow their nose, things like that. So that guide is really the person the children look to for that connection to the environment and to other children. And then the assistant and aide also are also using very intentional spoken language and redirecting the children in a very positive manner. But they're also doing things like, sweeping up that spill that the toddler didn't quite do, or, folding laundry if the children aren't quite folding all the laundry. All those tasks that from day to day, just like you have at home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then the aide.
So the aide is much doing the same, but it's a little bit more like they're not directly working with the children. They are doing dishes outside of the classroom or running that laundry to the washer or repairing materials that have been broken or making new materials with instruction from the guides.
Yeah.
Or up in the office printing some sort of forms that we might need, things like that.
Right. And that's not to say that all of them, if a child tips over, any of those adults are going to be right there. Yep. And any of them, they're all safe, attachment figures and consistent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think of what question.
And the other thing is with all of our classrooms, those aides and assistants and the guides, everybody gets a lunch break. And so they're used to those adults kind of changing within their team of 3 throughout the day. And
kind of like mom or dad.
Like mom or dad. Yeah.
And I think that just that consistency does amazing things for the kids.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that is another key piece about Montessori is that the children are in these mixed age groups. We didn't really talk about that. So in Kendall's class, that's 16 through 33 months. So about a year and a half. And then when they move to Children's House, it's 33 months through kindergarten. So that child is in that class for 3 to 4 years. And so those relationships between those adults and those children over time really blossom. And that partnership with the family really blossoms.
So how would you say Montessori kind of relates to that gentle parenting? And how do you bring Montessori into the home? Just that respect for child. Yeah.
I think it's very similar way of being with children. We don't have timeouts at school. We always try to redirect children. At very young children, that's super easy, right? You're like, look, over there, a bird.
Yeah, right.
But rather than getting in that moment with them and into a power struggle. And also, I know I've listened to your other episodes, really getting down with that child and talking to them and trying to understand what is happening with them in that moment rather than yelling or having a punitive reaction to something. So I think it's really a nice complement to each other.
They really are.
I think what's this?
What I would kind of say to that is the way that I see it work out at home is that my kids are so independent and but Eloise will come up to me at times and she'll say like, I know I can put my own jammies on, Mom. I can do it. But can you do it for me? Because sometimes that feels nice. And so the fact that she knows where she can be independent, but then also she still has it to be like, I know this feels snuggly and I feel loved and taken care of when Mom does that. And so like she wouldn't necessarily ask a teacher, a guide at school to be like.
But children do that. They'll, so let's say they're writing their name on their work. This would be a little bit older child, but, sometimes they'll come over and they'll say like, I don't feel like it today. And as a guide, you would say like, okay, today I'm going to show you how to make curly letters, so that's just another way of connecting with the children, and that it's not like, you have to do this.
Yeah, and they're at school to like have their minds engaged and stuff, where like at home, it is their time to more like rest and take their rest. And I love that like if they're being nurtured on at school and they're being nurtured on at home and we're in such a constant flow of communication, like I know when something happens to Eloise at school, even down to like, oh, she needed an ice pack for something. I really think that they say it takes a village, and you guys really make it a village for us. It makes it so much easier. Yeah. And the kids are such like testaments to.
Well, yeah, and I think children at a very young age, even the youngest toddlers, can start to articulate their feelings and experiences. And then you just feel happier. Yeah. Because you feel like you can saying what you think or feel, and someone's listening to you.
Right. What advice would you give to new parents who are they're just getting into the Montessori thing, and maybe like they were in more of like a kinder care type situation before? Maybe like yelling has been a thing that's happened a lot, and they're just learning about this new way. Besides give yourself grace, what advice would you have for parents who, because at first too, with children who are used to like having, being yelled at and stuff like that, it takes a while to like come down to like, no, we don't escalate beyond this.
Right.
What wisdom do you have?
I think, gosh, a lot of patience and a lot of time. Because sometimes things just take time with children, and that's not because the child is trying to be annoying or push your buttons. They just need time, whether it's doing something like putting on their shoes or working through emotion, So as much as we as adults can do to self-care and be in touch with our own feelings, and also say our own feelings, like even to your child, I'm feeling frustrated right now. I'm going to go have a glass of water. As long as your child is safe, that's fine to do that. And I would say that to the guides at school, the staff at school. Anything in your home that you can restructure to give a child independence where it's safe to do so will only serve the family unit, because your child will be less frustrated. They won't need you as much for things that are little deals, so that you're available when it is a big deal. They're going to have so much confidence if they can have a low cabinet to pull out, their own little snack that, you, of course, filter what's in there. You're not going to put candy bars in there, but if you can look at ways to structure your home, having things low, having things accessible, portioning things out. Some children need visuals. Sometimes you have like a little chart that shows how to, first we put on our pajamas, then we brush our teeth, then we read a book. But just to really try to slow down and look at it through their eyes and recognize they don't have all the life experience that we do as adults. Yeah. And they're not trying to frustrate us.
Right. I think I read something the other day and it said a rushed child is an anxious child. And I think that that's true. Like childhood isn't meant to be rushed through. It's meant to be like, savored, right?
Right.
And like to be able to savor that with them is so sweet.
Yeah. Well, and think about too, like how we feel if we're rushed in traffic or standing in line at the grocery store, things. We have self-regulation tools and also the perspective to say like, okay, well, I'm going to be home, but I'm going to be home 10 minutes later. They don't have that. For them, it's everything is immediate and now 100%.
And I'm feeling it all.
Yeah, I'm feeling it all. Like just imagine if your emotions and your senses were turned up to 120 all day long, every day.
And you had no control.
And you have no control. And you don't have the words to say anything.
Yeah.
And your pants are wet.
Yeah, right.
And you're hungry.
Yeah.
So they're just little human beings. Then we need to slow down.
And just teaching them to person.
And I think the Montessori school really captures that.
It really
and provides a place for that type, because it is real life, but it's not, because this is like protected time for them so that they can learn to feel that inner peace and apply that to all parts of their day.
Yes. So we have some listener questions for you. So one question is, what are some tips to get my toddlers to share? From a Montessori perspective, how would you approach that?
Oh, goodness. Well, I would say have your play area not have too many things, and you don't have to have a fancy shelf or anything, but I would limit choices in the first place. And then I would suggest having some way for your child to designate their workspace from their sibling or cousins or friends' workspace. It could be a mat or a separate table, or even like a placemat that they sit on, or a carpet square, so that you start to build that awareness of personal space. So I would start there. And then I would, and with toddlers, sometimes you can do like hand over hand, gentle, but, and model the words like, no, that's my work. Or please no, just really simple. Please no, my space. Over and over and over again. But I would say like creating that visual impression of boundary with having a workspace can go a long way to that.
So let's say like Kendall's playing with a little animal, right? From one of the things, and I'm making up a name, and Bobby Joe comes up and grabs the animal out of Kendall's hand. What would the guide say?
She would come over and first of all see if Kendall's okay. And then let's say Bobby Joe ran away with the tiger. Let's walk over and talk to Bobby Joe. So they would walk over together, and the guide would say, "Excuse me, Bobby Joe, I noticed that you took away Kendall's tiger. She's using that right now. Could you please give it back?" And toddlers would kind of like, they're in such awe of adults, in that situation, they're probably going to be like, okay. Another trick is, can I have the tiger? And the adult takes the tiger and kind of neutralizes the situation and distracts the children to two separate other things. Like, so you like neutralize the original conflict. Because when an adult's holding something, a toddler's really probably not going to grab it.
Yeah. That's, what about, this is about me. So what about when Eloise takes something away from Kendall and there's those two age groups? How would you handle that?
Well, Eloise knows better, right? So you can just kind of more matter-of-factly, Eloise, that's Kendall's. Please give it back.
And then Eloise would say, Mom, it's a community toy.
You can say, yes, but Kendall chose to use that right now, and so it's her turn.
Okay, but I was just about to grab it.
Well, you can choose something else and come back to that later when Kendall's not using it.
Can you move in with me? Okay, and then, so where is the line between gentle parenting and what people would say spoiling a child?
Yeah. The adult is the adult and the child is the child, and there are rules. Every family is going to have different rules. Every classroom will have, at school, we respect ourselves, the materials in the classroom, and each other. And that's it. And if something goes across that line, then it's more, you're done with doing this right now, and you can come sit next to me, or you could go sit and look at books in the library or something. So not in a mean way, but just... we're done. And so every family has to determine what those rules are about bedtime and food and noise level, sleep, all those things. But once you decide what your rule is, you have to stick to it.
Right.
So a great example is bedtime. And the one more book or the one more drink of water or coming in to sleep with mom and dad or whatever it is. You just have to decide what your line is and then stick to it. And it's really hard.
It's really
as a parent. It's really hard. And it's really hard as an educator too, when, you know, you see a child's kind of heartbreaking that they can't do exactly what they want to do at that moment because somebody else is using it, or time is over for the day or something like that. But, you know, there's always that reconnect of like, I love you, or I care for you. I want you to be happy. So you have your rule, but you still express the love, I guess, is what you'd boil it down to.
I love that. That was a really, that makes a lot of sense.
Because the parent is still the parent. The adult is still the adult. And that's really, it's hard, especially with your own children. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then our last question from a viewer was, how do I know if I'm looking for a Montessori program? Like, what are the things I should be looking for? Because, I mean, we love White Bear Montessori, like, but not everybody lives here.
Right.
So, like, if they're looking for a Montessori program that they want to feel safe, like, what do you look for? Yeah,
well, I would definitely, so as I mentioned at the beginning, Montessori isn't patented. So Bobby Joe's dad can start a school down the street and tack the word Montessori on, which is very unfortunate.
Right.
So you want to look at a program that is accredited by an outside organization.
Like the AMI.
Like the AMI. There's also AMS, which is the American Montessori Society. There are MACT, which is the Montessori Association, something, MACTE. Or NACI, which is the like general childcare. Like, you always want to do that anyway, whether it's Montessori or not. Look for some sort of accreditation, because that means that an outside entity is coming to do regular consultations or observations, checking in that the school is doing what they say they're doing.
Yeah, like OSHA for schools.
Exactly, like OSHA for school.
Right.
Regardless of what state you're in, you want to make sure the school is meeting, you know, their Department of Human Services guidelines in terms of safety training, like CPR and first aid or allergy response. And you can check those things out online and see if schools have, you know, citations against them or not. And that would also show, like, if the staff doesn't have the training and things. So that's just kind of like things to check off. But ultimately, like, you want to go in when you have a tour or an observation, you want to get a gut feeling. Is this a warm, welcoming place for my child? Is it dirty? You know, is there a lot of staff turnover? If so, why? Because it's important to have a really healthy, warm working environment to keep adults working in childcare happy. And educators in general, even teachers nowadays. The turnover is so great.
It is. My understanding is that it's attributed to burnout. Like, we don't necessarily give people the tools to be able to handle it as well. Not just so much as like a personal failure.
Right. Yeah, I think there's burnout. I think, like, particularly if it's a for-profit school and shortcuts are taken that short shrift the staff, they're going to feel that. They're not going to want to be there. I think having that sense of community, I mean, at our school, I feel like that also attracts high quality staff that just, they feel connected as a community of staff and with the greater community of the parents.
Yeah.
But, you know, in terms of the Montessori piece, I would, you know, say look for that accreditation. Get a tour. You may not be able to observe. You know, nowadays it's with safety and illness. We don't let a lot of people in the classrooms except current families, but you should at least be able to see a video or into the classrooms and get a good feeling in your gut about schools.
Perfect. Yeah. That is lovely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And there's so much on the internet about Montessori, and you know, if you look further, you can certainly find all the information you could ever want.
Yes. Yeah. So I know that you do not have biological children of your own, but you are very much a mother in our village.
Thank you.
And you are a mother in this village. Really, you are.
Thank you.
And so will you tell us your momedy?
Oh, well, so I do have a funny story. As a Montessori guide, that I had a 2.5-year-old say to me one day while she was having snack. I don't know if this is appropriate, but she said, "I watch Mommy and Daddy watch naked man movies." So children say the darndest things. It turned out that the parents had been watching the movie called The Full Monty, which does in fact have naked men in it. But, there was that awkward moment when I said to the mom, your daughter said you and your husband were watching naked man movies. So
she just like, yeah, we do that a lot? Or
what? She thought she was embarrassed, and then she thought it was really funny, and the dots connected, and
that is kids do say the darndest things.
Say the darndest things.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Okay, can you plug White Bear Montessori a little bit? Like, where are you guys? How do people find you?
Yeah, so we are just on the corner of Gem Lake, White Bear Lake, and Vadnais Heights here in Minnesota. And we serve children from 16 months through 12 years, 6th grade. We do have the parent-infant class as well. You can find us at wbms.org. We've been serving the community for 54 years. We started in 1970 as a little teeny tiny school, and we've grown and grown. We're hoping to expand even more. We have a very strong interest in our school right now. Yeah.
It is popping off at White Bear Lake Montessori.
It is. It is. But it's great. We have wonderful families at our school and wonderful staff.
And yeah, everything's just wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're so welcome. It's really fun.
Yes. So
love your family.
Love you. Love you. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that's it for this episode. Take care, Mama.